everybody to the show. Appreciate you with my man Josh, aka Uncle Fulio. We're going to be previewing the free agency that's about to hit. A storm is about to hit if it hasn't already. Josh, how are we doing?
Pretty well, my friend. CT, always a pleasure to be on here. Always good to see you, man. Love talking about these Knicks, and we just got to get ready for Thursday because it's going to be a big day.
Yep, absolutely right. If Knicks fans weren't let down, then maybe there's maybe there's some good things in store, and that's why I've got you here. I need you to make sense of this. We're going to go through the free agents available. I'm going to get your opinion on what is a good off season for you. That's free agency, training camp, preseason, trades, everything in a nutshell. But first, I've got to get your thoughts on the NBA draft. Now, we did the show before. You said your second most likely scenario was the Knicks trading out. So I've got to give you some props for that.
I mean, it was my second likely. It wasn't my first choice, obviously. I thought the Knicks were going to try to trade up or at least, draft someone reputable at the number 11 spot. But I guess I was right. They traded out of the pick completely and out of the first round completely, which threw everyone for a surprise. But I think what they got back and what they are attempting to do is a good thing. They just have to be able to execute it. And we'll be able to find that out on Thursday.
Yep. Okay. Yep. So it's not a finished product for you.
Correct.
Yep. That's rational. Obviously, fans were emotional, after on the night. It was a combination of things. I think the fact that it was dragged out a little bit. If Knicks fans sort of knew, okay, we've traded out, we've got this back straight away. Do you think that might have changed some people's sort of reaction?
I don't, because I think Knicks fans in general are impatient, and I kind of understand it. Essentially, what the Knicks did is they're selling their fan base on free agency again, based off what they did in the draft, right? So again, I think the fans would have probably still knowing that the plan is to try to go for free agency, would still not be content with what the Knicks will be trying to do. But here's how I look at it, CT. Like that pick at number 11, no matter who we would have gotten, I think it would have been difficult to get that player into the rotation. If, let's say, that player outshines and outworks someone that's currently on the Knicks roster right now, then you're talking about adding another young guy to a rotation that's already tight, right? AJ Griffin was available. Duran was available. I think it kind of worked out for the Knicks that Duran ended up on the Pistons. He's someone that, the Pistons are someone that they want Mitchell Robinson. So for them taking Duran, that's just one less team for the Knicks to worry about in their pursuit of Mitchell Robinson. Then you also have to look at number 13, Mark Williams, to Charlotte. Charlotte was another destination for Mitchell Robinson that is now taken off the board. So I think the Knicks were able to knock out multiple birds in one stone in this particular draft. And like I said, I think if you told fans that this was going to be the plan, they still wouldn't like it because, again, it doesn't really give us anything to hold on to. We haven't been successful in free agency, so we'll see.
Yep, it's that PTSD of the past, but it's also this front office maybe hasn't done enough yet to gain a lot of majority people's trust yet. And this is why this free agency is key. This is why I'm happy to be talking to you about it as well, because this, it would be the third, correct me if I'm wrong, the third free agency, the third summer of this front office.
Yeah, definitely. And last season, last off season, everyone's complaining about the players that we signed, the Kembas, the Tajes, the Burks, and the Noels, and a lot of these players that are going to be off the roster now. When the Knicks had a bunch of free agent cap space, right? But I think the difference is, and I think a lot of people are not understanding, that the Knicks had a ton of open roster spots that they had to fill, because coming off of that fourth seed, a lot of those players were expiring contract. Bullocks, Noel was expiring. All of those guys were expiring contracts. So the Knicks had not only money, but they had rosters they had to fill, or roster spots they had to fill. And they chose to fill them with veterans. Now, the veterans didn't work out, but it's not like the Knicks signed them to like overpriced long deals. They were either going to be gone in this offseason or they're going to be gone next offseason, no matter what. So, I just think that, again, you selling that to a fan base that's starving for a winner, right? That's very hungry for a winner. It's very difficult to do that. But I think so far, Leon Rose and company is doing a good job. I guess trying to preach patience and try to keep the fan base at bay.
Yeah, we're certainly not going backwards for me.
Right.
The Kemba Walker thing to me was already a sunken cost sort of during the season. You know, to me, the value in Kemba was him producing for the team. When he wasn't producing, I knew the writing was on the wall. And the 4 second-round picks, it doesn't matter to me as much. Where I wanted the Knicks to deviate on draft night was to look at, really look at some of those picks at 11 that I liked, maybe they didn't like. Adrian Griffin, Ousmane Dieng, Malachi Branham, Jalen Duren as well. But that's in the past, I guess. We got future picks back, which will no doubt be used. And it's looking like their goal now is to solidify their starting five with more veterans, support Tom Thibodeau, also continue to develop the current young players that we have on this roster as well, which we love, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But we've got to touch on some of the recent news as well. We're hearing a lot of rumors leading up to free agency, Josh, around Jalen Brunson. Now, the Knicks didn't appear to be a player, according to a lot of people, but we were saying backstage that I always felt that the Knicks were going to, dip into that market for Jalen Brunson. And you've been saying as well, you always felt that they could clear a cap space, which is looking like what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly the whole purpose of why the Knicks did what they did on draft night, was to create some cap space for Jalen Brunson. Now, again, a lot of people criticize the moves that the Knicks made the last offseason in regards to the contracts that they put together for those veterans, but that is exactly leading up to the Knicks' flexibility right now, right? If you look at it, the Knicks are currently, based on that Kemba Walker trade and what they did on draft night, they position themselves to be $12 million underneath the salary cap right now, the soft salary cap. Right. So by trading away Burks and trading away Noel for virtually no money back on your books, you're getting rid of $19 million in cap space. Right. $19 million. So that puts you right there at around $31 million in free cap space that you can be able to use underneath the salary cap. Right. So to me, that puts the Knicks in a great position, not to mention they still have Taj Gibson's $5 million. If they waive him, they can save $5 million. So we're talking about $36 million the Knicks can potentially use if, in a perfect scenario, the Clippers would take Noel and the Celtics would take Alec Burks. So I think the Knicks are in a phenomenal position to go out and get someone. The question is, can they be able to get someone finally in a free agency? To me, that's what I'm looking at. Going to be looking at this Thursday for what they have going on.
Mm. Yep, and I was saying the other night, Josh, look for the Mitchell Robinson re-signing to happen last, I believe, to go over the cap. All they need is Mitchell Robinson's cap hold. Then they go over the cap as the final move, I think, to maximize the space available. And there's talk about Alec Burks now. I've been saying he's probably the most coveted of the veterans we have in terms of getting something back. What are you hearing? What are you seeing about the situation with Alec Burks? Boston could be interested, Philadelphia as well. High character guy. He's been around the league, and with him, other teams know what they're getting.
Yeah, particularly when I think about Alec Burks, I think about his fit on a contending team. And a lot of people are criticizing Tibbs for what he did with Alec Burks last season, having him play the point guard. To me, I think that it helped raise Alec Burks' value just a little bit, right? Because if you think about it, Burks showed himself to be a utility kind of player that can fit in with any type of team to come off their bench and be able to contribute right away. Someone that can go in and knock down shots, pretty decent three-point shooter. He's a bigger type of guard. They can use him to ball handle whenever they need to. And he's someone that can go in and help a team. So for Boston, I think it's a really good fit to come off their bench because they need the extra oomph in scoring. And I think that would have definitely helped them in the series against the Warriors. So it makes sense for the Celtics to want someone like Alec Burks or any contender for that matter, because to me, off the bench, he can bring instant offense.
Yep. And salute to the chat, everyone out here. Pudge Nice says, Knicks want a first rounder. Celtics said no. I think that's a case of posturing. And I would love a first rounder for Alec Burks. Like everything you said, he could help a team. And I actually really looked at Boston and saying, hey, they fell short. What's a piece that could really help them of need? Another wing scorer off the bench. They've got enough wings, but I mean, another wing would help them definitely with the bench unit. And I do think with Alec Burks, his salary, the fact that it's expiring, it's a win-win for any team they don't have to make a long-term commitment to him.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And now Pudge Nice says that the Knicks want to have a first rounder. But think about this for a second. A lot of people were complaining, saying, kind of making fun of or making light of the fact that a lot of people were saying that the Knicks have contracts that are easily movable. So not only is this contract easily movable, so to speak, but the Knicks can wind up getting a first round pick out of it. They can get a first round pick out of this whole entire ordeal. So I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the Celtics are going to give that up. I think the whole purpose of the Knicks dangling Alec Burks out there is to create that cap space, which ultimately I think they will.
Yep, absolutely. Now, as a ripple effect of moving on from Alec Burks, obviously frees up money, but it opens up minutes. Who do you think is more likely and ready to step in to take bulk of Alec Burks' minutes?
I think no question it's Emmanuel Quickly. No question. If you think about Alec Burks, he played the point guard role last season, towards the end or like the second half of the season. Now that the Knicks potentially add Brunson, they bring in Brunson to start. Now you open up a whole can of worms for Emmanuel Quickly to be out there. You may see some times where you have Emmanuel Quickly and Jalen Brunson on the floor at the same time. Give Quickly a little bit of burn with his own ball handling. I think that'll be a good lineup for the Knicks to really throw out there. Kind of small, but I still think that it can be effective in what the Knicks can be doing offensively because of Brunson's willingness to give up the basketball, his efficiency from the field, and his ability to set Emmanuel Quickly up, or them guys set each other up in situations. So I really think that Emmanuel Quickly is going to be the guy here. And Deuce McBride still has some tries he needs to make. But again, I just think with the move and bringing in another point guard in Jalen Brunson and still having Derrick Rose, I think that it's going to be tough for Deuce McBride to see some minutes on the floor immediately, barring injury.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on the same page as you. I think Deuce will see more minutes later next season, but is still got to refine his game, build trust with the coaching staff. I'm okay with that. But quickly, you're absolutely on point. He is the next in line to get more minutes from the guard spot. The Knicks need to prioritize Quickly with this season. I feel like that's inevitable with Burks moves on. And obviously secondary Grimes. And we'll talk more about Cam Reddish and Grimes coming up. But we've talked about the rumors surrounding Alec Burks. Now as we go through the roster, Josh, and this free agency, what's the likeliness that Alec Burks is gone? Is it a foregone conclusion to you?
I don't know. I think he is a Tibbs favorite. I really just think it depends on if the Knicks really feel like they can get Brunson or not. I think if they're really, really sold that they can get Brunson, I think there's no doubt in my mind that the Knicks are going to try everything they can to shop Alec Burks to free up that cap space. If there's any question, I just don't think that the Knicks are going to pull the trigger and be so eager to give up Burks, considering the fact that, you're still going to be down a point guard, right? So I really just think it's 50-50. It's not as clear-cut as of yet, but I think if they know that they're going to get Brunson, then I think Burks is gone. No question about that.
Yep. Could they clear enough space for a Jalen Brunson offer sheet without moving on from Alec Burks?
Yes, they can. And the other piece to that would be Nerlens Noel, which I'm not sure if we're going to talk about a transition into. But the Knicks, again, because they have these contracts, these Bobby Marks used the term for it, these like sweet spot kind of contracts in between $8 to $18 million, all expiring at the end of this year. I think there's definitely multiple other ways for them to get rid of that. I just think Burks is the best option because he can fit a championship roster.
Yep, and you make a great point about not necessarily feeling the rush to get out of Alec Burks right now, carry him into the trade deadline even if possible. Just don't kill his value by playing him at point guard.
Right.
Because I felt like the Knicks would have got a first round pick last season if Alec Burks was in his maximum role off the bench, scoring, lighting it up as well. But that's in the past. Now we're looking ahead. NBA free agency. With Alec Burks' situation, I have to put it at the likeliness that he is traded before the season starts. That's just my thoughts on that. He's a commodity around the league. I think the Warriors really liked the time he was with them. And I mentioned Philly. Philly, they traded out of Danny Green. They're in a win now situation with Joel Embiid, James Harden. I think Alec Burks would be a great fit back in Philly again.
Yeah. CT, I agree. But again, it just goes to show you, like you just mentioned, teams who are well over the luxury tax. We're talking the Warriors. We're talking Philly, Boston now, even, right? These teams are spending over $140 to $150 million in salary cap for the next upcoming season. And they still can take on a player like Alec Burks because they have these exceptions. So this is what I try to tell Knicks fans in regards to who are afraid to spend money and afraid to give $25 million to players. Like, hypothetically, if all this stuff works out and we're able to get rid of a Brooks and a Noel and free up Taj Gibson's money and still sign Brunson and then sign Mitchell Robinson, the Knicks will be operating still at one of the lowest salary caps in the NBA with all of this stuff that they did. So I just think I need people to understand spending money in the NBA and being cheap in the NBA is not going to help you. Like, you have to spend money in the NBA. That's what the salary cap is for and all of these exceptions. So,
yeah, actually, Pete, everyone obviously who doesn't follow Josh on Twitter, you see the handle, but I did see your take on the reason why the Knicks had to add your salary. You have to reach the floor in the NBA. You have to sign a certain amount of roster spots to begin with. And, I'm not going to go back and change my take. I was okay with the Knicks bringing back the core from what they did. I just happened to think that they would be more easily moved. Like, I didn't think Nerlens Noel was going to be out for the whole season. D Rose out for the whole season. That was literally the worst case scenario.
Yeah, it's like everything happened at one time. Just everything kind of went wrong for us. But I think ultimately the Knicks did the right thing, and we'll see what happens. Again, we still have to. The jury is still out.
Yep. And we'll get through Ajay's take on Jalen Brunson because it's a win-win for CAA, Leon Rose and his son. And I was thinking this the other day. I do think the Knicks are heavily interested, but I could see this as something that's just a cherry on top,
I mean, CT. Listen. All this stuff about Leon Rose and CAA, like, he doesn't work for CAA anymore. He works for the New York Knicks. If people want to believe in this conspiracy theory that Leon Rose is secretly sabotaging the Knicks organization in favor of CAA, I just don't believe it. I have to believe it. I'll believe it when I see
it. Yeah, Leon Rose, head of CAA, there's always going to be that connection. But look, at the end of the day, the market for Brunson, truth be told, he drove that value up with his play in the playoffs. And we'll talk about more in terms of the free agents coming up. But we're highlighting the dudes on this roster first. Alec Burks, we've put it at the likeliness that he'll be out of here. And where are you sitting now with a bigger salary, a bigger signing, had more buzz, Evan Fournier? So he's going to be playing for France in Eurobasket. Got a big summer ahead. Broke the franchise shooting record for the New York Knicks last season. Did his job shooting. But Josh, does he help the team on both sides of the floor? And is he going to stay? Is he going? What's happening with Evan Fournier?
All right, CT. So here's what I'll say about Evan Fournier. I think for this offseason, I think he's going to be safe this offseason because the Knicks really don't have to include him in any trades. Like I said, I think there's multiple other scenarios in order for the Knicks to free up money, right? I think $18 million for Evan Fournier, I think is fair. I think for his amount of his amount of years in the league, I think he's deserving of that money. Now, I personally would have given them that extra year. Like, I wanted his money to expire at the same time Burks, Taj, and all of that like that. But I guess, the market kind of worked itself out for Evan Fournier, right? So it kind of worked out. Here's what I will say about Fournier. I think next season is a good opportunity for us to maybe trade Evan Fournier away. Considering the fact now that you got to pay RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, if he somehow decides to pop, all of a sudden now you got to think of a contract for him, which the Knicks can go over the salary cap for. So I think that'll be there. But I think for Evan Fournier, defensively, he's a liability. Offensively, he's doing what he's asked to knock down 3-point shots, which is a good thing. But I just think in order for the Knicks to take the next level, and they have guys who are capable of knocking down 3-point shots and Grimes coming off the bench, and other assets that we can add later on, I can see a scenario where next offseason, Evan Fournier can be moved to a team, to a contender that has a trade player exception, just like what the Knicks have right now, and they free up a little bit more cap space. So I like Fournier, but I just don't think he's going to be the future of this team.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I love his shooting. Yeah, in terms of a roster that is in badly need of floor spacing, Evan Fournier is a dude that definitely gives us that. He's a big game player as well. He had some great highlight games. Some of the best games from last season were the games that Evan Fournier lit it up, kept us in it. Stick it to his old team, Boston.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and most Knicks fans are actually cool with Fournier. He's a nice character. You know, we know his shortcomings defensively, and I like P. Nice's point on point. I was saying this for a while now. Fournier off the bench to me would be a sweet spot. I know it's tough with the salary, but I think there's been dudes come off the bench earning 18 mil before. If it's the right role, if Quentin Grimes makes a big leap, Cam Reddish is there, I'd have no issue playing someone on a lesser salary ahead of Fournier if you've made the decision that Fournier is not a long-term part of your future.
So CT, here's what I'll say to that. And I understand where you're coming from with that, and a lot of Knicks fans take on the whole starter versus coming off the bench thing, right? I think even sometimes this past season, like when Fournier wasn't performing that well, Tibbs started him, but found a way to cut his minutes, and he wasn't in the game in late game situations. So I think a lot of times people get confused with playing time and who starts and who sits. Like I think Quentin Grimes can get a lot of meaningful minutes coming off the bench. Coming off in a bench role, playing down the stretch of games, despite not starting, right? And I think oftentimes people get that confused. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. I would love to see Grimes come in and take that spot. But to me, I still feel like Fournier at this point in his career, he's earned it. And I think Quentin Grimes has to show a little bit more in order to move, Fournier off of that spot. So.
Okay, yep. So Quentin Grimes, in your eyes, still growing. Yep, still making a name for himself.
And he's doing
Evan.
great. He's doing great. I love Quentin Grimes, one of my favorite players on this team. Trust me. I love the way he plays defense. I love the way he no hesitation when he shoots the basketball. No hesitation. But I just think, and I'm sorry to cut you off, I just really think that the Knicks defensively, as much as people want to complain about Fournier and potential defensive limitations of a Brunson adding to this team, the Knicks were still top 10 in a lot of defensive categories last year. Our issue, for the most part, is offense. And for the last 4 years, our offense has been horrendous. We've been terrible. So Fournier, even though he's not giving us much on the defensive side of the basketball, offensively, it helps to have him out there to spread the floor when you have guys like RJ and Randall who have not shot the ball that well from the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it'd be a heck of a demotion being the franchise leading three-point shooter and then go to the bench. I think as long as Tom Thibodeau's coach, I could likely see Fournier being the starting guard still, if he's still on the roster. Now, talking about moving from Fournier this summer, to me, it's not as likely, but I wouldn't be shocked. There's teams with exceptions, like you said. Could you see Fournier move before the season, or do you more feeling like he'll be back to start the season?
I feel like he'll be back during the season. I feel like he'll be back. I mean, it'll be a shocker to me. I'm not going to rule it out completely, but I would be shocked if Fournier's moved before the beginning of the season. Like I said, I think next offseason, because he's going to have 1 year remaining on his deal, and then you're going to have some teams with that player exception. I think that'll be a good time to move Fournier. I think you can get the most for him at that period of time. But I just want to see this experiment with Fournier at least 1 more year because of the shooting that he brings to the table. And like I said, if Grimes finds a way to outplay him during the course of the season, you might see Evan Fournier going at the deadline. You know what I'm saying? You might see that, but I think Grimes still has a way to earn that spot in the starting lineup. I don't think he's ready for that as of yet.
Yeah, I think it's the most palatable thing at the moment. And I was saying this too, with the longer Fournier's contract elapses, the more likely, the more enticing he's going to be with his shooting as well. I don't think Fournier is going to fall off no cliff. He's not going to be a player like that. His D, what it is now, is what it's going to stay at. I feel like he ain't 33 or whatever. I think he's 31. So I just hope for good health. I hope he plays well for Eurobasket, for his country, and he stays healthy, because it'll be a disaster if he gets injured there.
Well, Fournier was probably one of the most durable Knicks last season, believe it or not. At his age, one of the oldest players on the team, still the most durable. So that's a good thing.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, no lies there. So yeah, look, Fournier and Burks ain't the worst of them. But here where we get with a dude now, let's touch on a dude who I feel like is off this team this summer, and that is Nerlens Noel. I was a fan of his game in terms of the season before, and he stayed healthy. So Leon Rose, he fell into a trap, so to speak, gave him his money. Now the priority, it looks like Mitchell Robinson, and we're going to touch on him. Everybody, don't worry. But Nerlens Noel, what's going to happen with Nerlens Noel? Do the Knicks need to attach assets to get out of him? What do you see playing out with Nerlens?
So not quite, CT. Again, the Clippers have a trade player exception. They need a big. And to me, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think those trade player exceptions are use it or lose it, right? You got a guy like Noel who has 1 year remaining on his contract. I think it makes sense for the Clippers to go out and get him. The Knicks can basically trade him for 4 picks. We can gain assets out of that deal, right? So, again, the Knicks don't necessarily have to, but let's say for the sake of argument that the Knicks want to trade away Noel to a team not named the Clippers or a team that does not have a traded player exceptions. You attach a couple second-round picks to Nerlens Noel? Like, is that that big of a deal? Like, those assets aren't that huge. You know what I'm saying? So, to me, I think that with the emergence of Jericho Sims, with the Knicks' likelihood to sign Mitchell Robinson again, I just think that there's no room on this roster for Nerlens Noel, and I think he'll be better fit a different organization while the Knicks continue to go young.
Yep. And that was a contract I wasn't mad at either, in terms of it was just a 2-year deal. You know, I know fans have a lot of issues with the number Noel got, you know, and Mitch not getting, you know, extended earlier. To me, you earn your contract. Nerlens Noel, you know, for his injury history and all that, he earned that $11 million, I think, to the Knicks, you know, the season before, finishing in the 4th seed. The Knicks don't get to the 4th seed if Nerlens Noel doesn't step up in Mitch's absence. So, you know, it was unfortunate he was injured all last season, but the fact is it's expiring after this season. And I agree with you. I don't think the Knicks need to give up too much. They definitely probably need to attach a second or a couple of seconds to get out of Nerlens, or like you said, somebody who values his play a lot more and can just, you know, fit him into that exception as well. So yeah, Nerlens Noel, I think most of the fan base is on board with Nerlens gone, and I'm okay. Sims as well.
Me too.
Yep, you're cool with that? Okay. Yep.
Huge fan of Jericho Sims. I wanted the Knicks to draft him on draft night. I was saying, Jericho Sims, bring this kid in here. I seen him play at Texas. I just think he's a freak of nature. When I look at this guy, like in person, when I went to the Knicks games here in Charlotte and down in Atlanta, and I like this dude walk past me. It's just like looking at a tank monster just walking by you. Super athletic, just powerful. You know, very quiet too, like kind of like the silent giant or the sleeping giant, but he's just super athletic, and I feel like and now look, we're hearing things that the Knicks are going to convert his 2-way contract into a regular contract, a more guaranteed contract, which is great news for him. And I want to see him a part of this 12-man roster. I think he can fit on this this team, and I don't think that's by coincidence. I think they realize that they're trying to shop Noel, so they're going to need a backup center to play with Mitchell Robinson.
Yep, absolutely on point. I love his game more on the defensive end. Actually, the way he can switch on the perimeter, he's got lateral quickness. Is Jericho, and he's one of the best screen setters already with his big wide frame on the offensive end. He could really clear space for quickly to get around the pick, and that. But yeah, while we're touching on the centers, absolutely, Jericho Sims is a great part of our young core. I look forward to seeing him grow more in summer league, which we'll touch on shortly. But in terms of recapping all the players that are on this current roster that we feel like there are question marks on their future, we obviously wave goodbye to Kemba Walker. So we've talked about Evan Fournier, Alec Burks, now Nerlens Noel. Now let's talk about, we got D Rose as well, and we got Julius Randle. So where do you sit with Derrick Rose at the moment in terms of me personally? I could see Derrick Rose coming in to start the season. If I had to put a bet on it, this is Derrick Rose's last season in New York. You know, I don't think he lasts past the trade deadline, and I think another team, it's wise to look at with our young guards coming up. It's wise to look at another home for Derek. What do you think?
I agree. I think Derrick Rose does have a team option for the next season, so I think his deal is expiring. I think he's a good guy to have in the locker room. I think he's a really good guy to have in the locker room. You keep him around to mentor quickly. I think he did a really good job of doing that last season. And even before he got hurt, he was a really good mentor to Emmanuel quickly. He's someone that I feel like in that Taj role can be able to talk to, can basically translate tips to the players and vice versa. But he's someone that's been around. Now, again, he's making $12 million, a little bit too high for him, in my opinion. But again, this is money. The Knicks are one of the low payrolls in the NBA, so I'm not really sweating that. But he's someone that I feel like can help a contender. So if the right trade comes around, I feel like, Derrick Rose can be out the door at the deadline. I don't see him move prior to the season happening, but I think at the deadline, as Quickly starts to take that next step, as Grimes start to take that next step, and, the Knicks are starting to do well with their kids, I think you could see Derrick Rose, and it's at $14 million. You could see Derrick Rose traded to a contender to help them in a playoff run.
Yep. Yeah. To me, Derek is probably the least guy in terms of, for me, there's no rush. Like, he's a good character guy. When healthy, he's going to produce as well. So let's carry him into the season. Check out the trade deadline as well. The more that salary expires, again, the more teams are going to be enticed at the deadline. A quick playoff push, and then he's off their books. Another reason why I think Alec Burks is going to be a good commodity at the trade deadline as well with those guys. So yeah, these expirable contracts, they're eventually going to be easier to move, or more and more easier to move. Now with Julius Randle, I've been saying too, I feel like he's starting opening night. He's coming back. His value is just not where it is at the moment. What would be a successful season with keeping Julius? And what do you see in the pipeline for Julius's future?
So this one's a little bit tough for me because I think the Knicks are still committed to Julius Randle. I do think that they realize that Obi Toppin is there, and now it's creating a kind of a conflict of interest because, Obi Toppin was the guy who Leon Rose drafted, right? And even though Obi Toppin is not a Tibbs kind of player, I do believe Tibbs was on board with the drafting of Obi Toppin because he felt that he was coachable, right? I think it really comes down to how the Knicks perform during the season, right? If the Knicks are, still starting off kind of sluggish or kind of up and down, and they have a similar season to what they did last year, without the antics, of course, I'm just talking about as far as the record, defense being okay, but still can't find a way to close games out. I think there's going to be a lot of talk about Randle moving next offseason, right? I think for the Knicks, a successful scenario would be at this current moment in time, not for Julius Randle to reclaim his all-NBA form, but for Julius Randle to have a pretty good season, still put up his 20 and 10, up his shooting numbers a little bit, and the Knicks use his contract to trade for someone who is a disgruntled star, because he's going to make the most on the team next season, I think at $26 or $28 million or something like that. So I think Julius Randle, if he can show, a really good a 20 and 10 season, get back to a really decent, manageable efficiency number, I think he could be traded at the next deadline. Not deadline, but off season for a potential star. Maybe Donovan Mitchell wants out of Utah, or we'll see what happens with that. But I think that'll be the best case scenario for the Knicks. Is that Randle does not reclaim his all NBA form, but he gets just a little bit under that, enough to be traded to a different team.
Yep, absolutely. I'm of the same mindset. And a piece to the chat. Everyone out here got this chat buzzing as well with Josh, Uncle Folio, and talking about free agency. Yeah, Julius Randle is the biggest question mark on this team moving forward. There's no doubt. And other than the same mindset that we need to, reclaim his value, play to his strengths. It's bad business selling low on your best asset at the moment as well. Now, I don't think it could get any worse. Do you feel like it could get any worse? No, I think Julius Randle's value can only go up from what it was. Just play to his strengths. Hopefully we have more point guard play, whether it's Brunson, Sexton, we talk about later in the show. But with more touches in the guard spot, Julius needs to get in his spots. The coach needs to just ride him, be more accountable. And limit his 3-point shooting. You know, we know that's regressed a bit, but play to his strengths and then get that trade value up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Knicks definitely have to get his trade value up. There's no doubt about that. I don't think his trade value is completely gone, like completely gone. I do think he can draw some interest around the NBA because teams realize their value in having someone, who can put the ball on the floor. May not be the best person to facilitate your offense, but he still has that ability to do so. So if you compare him up with someone that has a point guard, established point guard already, that has an established system that he can be able to add to and supplement and augment, I think that'll be a good scenario for other teams. But right now, I think a lot of teams only see Randall as the guy who can do everything or is going to attempt to do everything. So I just think the fit with him and RJ is just not that good. I would rather put Randall around a guard who can be able to knock down 3-point shots, who can take the ball away from Randall when he needs to. And I just don't feel like the Knicks have that person on the team right now. Other teams may have that. So we'll see.
Yeah. And here's a theory I got for everybody too. You know, in this modern NBA, narratives can flip with a switch. Look at the salary cap that's about to go up. Let's say, devil's advocate, Julius Randle comes in focused, whatever, mentally fit, which is a great point the chat's making. Illmatics, mentally committed, mentally fit over last season, put it in the past, come back. Let's say he reclaims some form. Like you said, not all NBA, but just play solid starter form, repairs some value. Then suddenly, hey, that 25 to 27 mil, that's chump change, which some of these guys are going to be earning in the league in the next 2 years. I mean, the cap goes up, and Julius is only just entering his deal. It's for a guy that's a 2-3 option on a team. I'm keeping it $1. It's a cheap salary. You thinking the same thing? If he reclaims good form,
absolutely, it's a team-friendly deal. Like Julius Randle, on average, I think his average salary is $26 million a season. That is not a lot. And the people are complaining about Brunson getting, between 25 and 27 million. That is not a lot of money. But yet these same people want to pay RJ $36 million annual salary. Now, that's a little bit more than we're talking $26 to $27 million. And I think if Randle can regain his all-star form, that's a cheap contract. And any team would love to have something like that on their contract for at least the next 3 years. So I think people need to consider that. And I think you're right. It can change in a flip of a switch. I just don't foresee it happening to the extent where we need to keep Julius Randle around for the next 5 to 10 years. I just don't see it coming to that level. But you're right.
Yeah, and I think most fans' issue was either extending Julius early or his play. It was never. I've rarely seen any arguments over the number he got paid. I mean, it's hard to argue that he got overpaid.
Right.
in this modern NBA. But we all pray, we hope that Julius comes back if he's still on the roster, comes back more focused. The coaching staff put him in ways to succeed as well. See, if Josh, every player on the NBA is an alpha. They come on the court, they're the best guy growing up, in their area. They make it to the league. They're high on themselves. If you continue to let a guy shoot as many times as he wants, dribble the ball as long as he wants, you're setting him up to fail, right? As a coach, why you're called the coach is you need to rein a player in. And I think that's where Tom Thibodeau could improve on this season with Julius as well. He somewhat contributed to Julius's failure, in my opinion.
I don't think there's any question about that. And I'm not going to take anything away from Julius because I think Julius definitely played a part in that as well. But I do think Thibodeau, with the type of offense that he runs, strictly isolation, running the offense through Julius Randle, a lot contribute to a lot of this offense's issues, right? And I think there's a lot of pressure for Julius that he basically could not be able to handle or replicate from the previous season. So hopefully Tibbs is able to reel him in a little bit, hopefully adding a point guard that can really dribble the ball and can be able to basically calm things down at the end of games can help. And hopefully the emergence of RJ Barrett can help. RJ Barrett himself needs to be more vocal and taking that next step into his stardom, as Knicks fans want to put it, right? I wanted to be able to see RJ do that and step into that role. So there's a multitude of things that can happen. It's not just on Randle, but Randle does play a part in it, so does Tibbs.
Yep. Definitely, yeah, absolutely. And I've been saying this, like Illmatics has said as well, the best version of Julius, and I'll get your opinion on what is the best version, but for me, it's the New Orleans Julius as well. A nice role, playing his role as well. When he came to the Knicks, there's no doubt he became our number one, and he's him and RJ on different nights, but he's still essentially the number one on this team as well. And in terms of, what's a successful game look like for Julius on this current team, it's continue his rebounding, push the pace. We actually played really well when Julius started pushing the pace at the end of last season, not holding the ball too long, be a willing passer as well. And put up his 16 to 20 points a night. Those 30-point pieces for me aren't necessary.
Yeah, I think the best version of Julius is when he's not on the floor thinking. I think when he thinks way too much, and all eyes are on him, I just don't think he can handle that. So I preferably would like to see Tibbs put him in spots where it's going to be more successful. Put him down in the low block, have someone feed him. Maybe put him at the 5 a little bit. Let's say Mitch gets into foul trouble, Sims gets into foul trouble. I think, like Be Civil, I said I didn't even read what he said, but it kind of came out at the same time as I said it. But I will put him down in the block. My only issue with that is Mitchell Robinson. Can Mitchell Robinson complement Julius Randle? Being able to get out the way, not just sit in the dunker spot the entire time, put some more back cuts, some more screens, actually run a motion offense. Maybe a motion offense can help someone like Julius Randle. I don't know. But the best version of Randle is when he's not out on the floor thinking. He's just playing and just making that read and going.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. And, when a player is ascending too, Josh, and they haven't yet reached their heights, they're a bit agitated, they're hungry. Julius reached his heights. He became All-NBA, All-Star, Most Improved. I'm not saying he doesn't want to get back there, but I feel like a player is probably a little bit more at peace with themselves, a bit more calmer when they've reached certain level of success in the league. He's still young enough, still got a bright future ahead in this league. But I feel like the fact that he's tasted some success, the playoffs, that should spur him to want to bounce back again.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Now, I don't think it's going to be the same thing like last season. I'm a little bit more optimistic on Julius than a lot of people. I don't see him replicating that same All-NBA season. However, I do think he can get back to being a 20-10 basketball player and just being more efficient from the field, not turning the ball over as much, particularly if you had a point guard.
Yeah, you mentioned the turnovers. That's absolutely key as well. Now we get into the meat and bones of this thing. We've chopped up a lot of guys on this roster, but we've left one guy out who's a potential big key in the big man department for this team moving forward. And this might break the Charlie Ward curse. Mitchell Robinson, drafted with us, groomed, has grown. And I won't lie, Josh, there was at times it looked like he was out the door, but now it's looking like he's a keeper. So Mitchell Robinson, what are your thoughts on the potential re-signing, and the number that Mitch is worth, and what you would be comfortable giving him?
So I think, well, first of all, in regards to the Charlie Ward curse, I don't think it will account towards Mitchell Robinson because he's a second-round pick. I think the whole thing with the Charlie Ward thing was first-round picks. So I'm kind of split on this because I do think Mitchell Robinson is a big part to what we do. I still think you got to have a stretch 5 out there on the floor, particularly when you got Randall and when you got RJ. None of these guys are really that good at shooting the basketball from the outside. And a lot of times we depend too often on these outside jump shots whenever things tend to break down because we can't score in the paint. We don't have any penetration and we can't score in the paint. So I would prefer for the Knicks to have a stretch 5, someone who can knock it down from the outside. If not, someone who can shoot threes, just someone who you can throw the ball down to and tell you to go get me a bucket, do some inside moves or something like that in order to basically have the offense score in a different way. As far as Mitchell Robinson, I mean, it's apparent that the Knicks are probably going to sign him now. The $10 to $15 million range a season, I think he's definitely worth that. From what he brings defensively, I think that's a very fair contract. And not to mention, I think, offensively, sitting in the dunker spot, really efficient from the field. I think there's a way for him to get better, but I just like the fact that he is a part of our core. And I will be willing to pay him $10 to $15 million a year, no more, no less than that. I think that's a very fair contract for him.
Yep. Completely agree with that, man. It says something about stability, keeping guys as well. You don't want a revolving door all the time. And I said re-signing Mitch doesn't mean he's your long-term center forever. It's
right.
It means you're retaining an asset. You're giving him a chance to continue to play with the team, continue to grow, see what becomes of that as well. And hey, he might just surprise us and come back an even better player. You know, we may not even surprise a lot of Knicks fans. This kid, he plays with pain. You know, if he's hurt, you can talk about his durability and things like that, but you can't question his heart. Mitch does play with nagging injuries and things like that. And of course, he's essential to Tom Thibodeau's defense. You know, the rim protection, somewhat switchability. But an underrated part of Mitch's game, and I want to ask you, what part of Mitch's game do you feel is most realistic, can improve? But I would love to see him improve with setting screens.
Oh, no question.
And free throw shooting. Two simple things. The amount of illegal screens, Josh, that Mitchell Robinson would set he'd be good for 2 or 3 a game.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'll add defensive rebounding to that. So I feel like Mitchell Robinson is a great offensive rebounder, but defensively, he can't secure rebounds that much. You know, the Knicks play good defense anyway. But screen setting, I think that's an important step. A lot of people say they want to see Randall run a pick and roll with Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson's not that good of a screener. I can't name the Knicks' best screener last season from the big position was Taj Gibson. Say what you want about Taj Gibson, but Taj Gibson was the best screen setter. Not only that, he can be able to defend the pick and roll better than any Knick big that we had. Any Knick big. So I think you're absolutely right. I think Mitchell Robinson, if he can get better with that, and he can get better with defending the pick and roll, he did a good job of not fouling as much. I think he definitely improved in that category, but knowing when to hedge the pick and roll, knowing when to go back on the pick and roll, knowing how to take away passing lanes. I think Taj Gibson did that the best. And if Mitch can do that, then we're really talking about he can justify making $20 million in that case, in my opinion. But right now, from what he is, he still has a lot to improve on. I think a $10 to $15 million contract per season is appropriate for Mitchell Robinson, and I expect him to take that.
Yep. And the free throw shooting, like I said, if he could shoot 75%, and I think, this might be a reach, but I think he did improve with free throw shooting a little bit. It was, there was some extra consistency at times when he was at least hitting one of the two. The form isn't great to me. The free throw shooting form as well. I hope he's working on that part of his game, because that'll be key as well. Missed points at the line. He gets fouled a lot, so he's gonna live at the line.
But CT, this tells you. I know everyone was kind of salivating over Mitchell Robinson, like shooting those threes and practicing the offseason videos and all of that stuff. This guy goes to the free throw line and his form is horrible, like horrible. He has a horrible form. So that just goes to show you not everything that you see on a practice video can definitely translate into a game, because if Mitchell Robinson was really working on that shot as much as we thought he was, it would result at that free throw line. You'll be able to see that the free throw line much better. So,
yeah, I don't put any stock in those workout videos. You're seeing them because they want you to see them.
Right.
Exactly. Those dudes that live in the gym and that RJ's, Jimmy Butler's, that they don't leak videos of them working out, because they're putting in the work. They're getting paid to work, right? Just work.
Agreed.
As well. But screen setting with Mitch, with the number, it's looking like it's going to be somewhere around 11, maybe 11, 12. I don't think the Knicks really need to outbid themselves at the moment with, like you said, with Dallas, Charlotte, and Detroit out of the market, what seems.
CT, so at Jay in the chat says that Mitchell Robinson sets great screens. And, I think, this comment is kind of true, because I do think it is up to the guards as well to put them in a better position. But to say that Mitchell Robinson sets great screens, no, Mitchell Robinson does not set great screens at all. If you think about it, we don't have guys that outside of Rose that can really get past that man one-on-one, like on a consistent basis. We don't have that on this team. So if Mitchell Robinson were to set great screens, I think that would free up a little bit more space for our guards to be able to work. But he's not that great of a screen setter. I think he has some room to improve. He's not terrible. He's not horrible. But I think there is some room for him to improve. But great is too strong of a word. I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, I think if I break it down, it's a lot to do with timing.
Yeah.
Well, he's got poor timing. Sometimes he'll creep right behind the guard and not give him any time to, and he'll lay some wood on them, which I'm okay with. But in terms of, you'll get the call all the time. And with Mitch, he needs to put himself in the right angle as well. He's a pretty slim frame, so for the screen to be effective, he needs to set the right angle. With Jericho Sims, he's so big that he's just a mountain to get around, no matter what. And so, yeah, with that said, we've touched about Mitch now. Now, Jericho Sims is in the news today, looking like the Knicks are going to convert him to a from a two-way deal to a regular season deal. To me, this was a no-brainer. I think this was on the cards. And another reason why I think this is going to happen is because to free up a two-way spot. Why would they need to free up another two-way spot? Well, Jean Montero is currently only on an Exhibit 10. So if he plays well in training camp, summer league, preseason as well, they're going to, he could slide into a two-way spot a lot more palpable than, with Jericho Sims coming in now on the regular roster spot. So I'm liking that move, and I want it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really seen much of John Montero. I think he definitely is a project. Definitely has a lot he still needs to work on. Offensively, he has that potential of getting a bucket. A lot of people compare him to Trier, right? Alonzo Trier. Defensively, definitely he needs a lot of work there from that standpoint. I don't know if the Knicks are going to use that extra two-way spot on him. I do think it is going to be someone from the G League or one of these players that we bring into camp to try out that's going to earn it. I can't say it's going to be guaranteed to be him. But I will say that I definitely seen Sims getting converted into a guaranteed contract coming. I think he deserves it. As a second-round pick, that's huge for him and his family. I expect Sims to contribute a lot next season, particularly if you think about Mitchell's injury history and, just getting important minutes off the bench.
Yep, no doubt. Yep, 58th pick, a steal. And I think there's a lot more to Jericho's game that we're going to see as he gets more comfortable. He's got some moves underneath the basket as well. If him or Mitch, and I agree with the centers, we badly need a big man that can at least extend the floor a little bit with a baby J, a mid-range, someone like that. And do you feel like Jericho or Mitch will get to that point where they can flash a little J?
I think more than likely it's going to be Sims rather than Mitchell Robinson.
How did I know you'd say that?
I think Sims, if you look at the free throw line. I mean, I don't know what the percentages are for Sims and for Mitch respectively, but from what I've seen with Sims, he has the better form at the free throw line. And he's just someone that's a little bit more polished at this point coming out of the NBA draft than Mitchell Robinson did. So I expect that to come from Jericho Sims more than likely. A little hook shot, maybe a little baby jumper. 18 feet. I expect Sims to give that more than Mitch, to be honest with you.
Yep. And of course, the success of these big men is going to be dependent on the other players, the point guards, looking for them, getting them in the right spots as well. And as we pivot towards the guards, it's going to be huge unlocking these guys. If Mitch comes back, he was left on an island a lot of times and, or had the mismatch and wasn't fed the basketball. So I feel like if it's Quickly, Brunson, Sexton, whoever, Randall, RJ, they all need to do a better job at getting these big men involved, because even Jericho under the basket is a mountain, and you feed him the ball as well, he's either going to get fouled or he's going to slam it home as well on the alley-oop. So that's a big key part of this offense that I'm going to be looking for, Josh, this season.
So the difference, and you're absolutely right, the difference between Mitchell Robinson and Jericho Sims under the rim is I think that Jericho Sims needs to work on keeping the ball higher underneath the rim. If you look at Jericho Sims, anytime he gets the ball, gets that offensive rebound, he has a tendency of bringing it back down. Not necessarily putting the ball on the floor, but just kind of bringing it down and making himself smaller. If he can just find a way to keep that ball higher, I think it'll go great. That's the next step of his development that I want to see. Keeping the ball high. When Mitch gets that offensive rebound, it's high, and he's going back up, or he's going to get to the free throw line. Jericho Sims needs to work on improving that part of his game, and I think a lot of other things will follow as well.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. You're on point with that. Now, we've touched on all of the current players. Now it's time to explore the free agent market as well. Now, Jalen Brunson at the very, very top. With that said, it's looking like more likely. Yeah, we just saw a chat from Mark Stein as well. And I've been saying this for a while now. People underestimated the connections, to me, Josh, with Brunson and the organization. And it started when Jalen was a young kid, when he was around the practice facility. Allen Houston, these kind of guys, Larry Johnson, were guys that he looked up to. Allen Houston was Jalen Brunson's idol growing up. Now, when I saw Allen Houston and Worldwide Wes at the playoff game in Dallas as well, that just clicked home that, like, hey, the Knicks are sending their best line of defense to show Jalen that, hey, this is the place you need to be. So in terms of what a successful free agency looks like, where does Jalen Brunson fit into the picture for you? And do you feel like this is gonna move us to the right direction? Is there someone else you want ahead of Brunson? Tell us what your thoughts are.
Ooh, spicy question, CT. Spicy question. So to answer your first question, yes, I think this move puts us in the right direction. Someone put a comment out there earlier, how do I think Brunson can help, or the Knicks have struggled to close out games, who can be the player to help us close out games? I think it can be Brunson. Not for his ability to knock down big shots, which he can do, not for his ability to win, which he has done multiple times in his college career and in the NBA, but his ability to settle it down. Like, I'm not asking Jalen Brunson to come in and score 25 points a night. That's not why I'm bringing Jalen Brunson in here. That's not what his $25 million is going to be for. His $25 million is to be a guy who you can take the ball out of Randall's hands, you can take the ball out of RJ's hands, and he can be able to set them up and make great decisions with the basketball. And if we need him to shoot, he is a 45 to 48% shooter from the field. He can knock down shots. So that's the reason why I have Brunson, and I think he's going to take us to the next level from that aspect. But the next level does not necessarily mean contention. Doesn't mean championship. It just means that your offense is going to be better and you can compete for a playoff spot every single year. And we can continue to build after that, right? We can continue to add pieces on with the Brunson, with the flexibility that we have to get that star to come in here and get us to that next level, whether it be contention or that level in between, right? There's been a lot of talk about Murray, DeJounte Murray. I think DeJounte Murray is a better player than Brunson, no doubt. I just question the fit. I think Murray is a little bit more ball dominant. So how can you fit a guy like that with Randall and RJ? Who's going to take the majority of that ball handling? None of those guys are great shooters, right? So who's going to play off of who? And I just question the fit. But there's no doubt in my mind that Murray's the better player. It's just that how will things be able to fit with him there? Plus, you have to give up assets, things of that nature. So I think both moves take us to a next level. I just like the Brunson because it's more of a cleaner fit with what the Knicks have right now.
Yeah, I certainly agree with the shooting. Yeah, Jalen Brunson being able to stretch the floor. And I'll start by saying with Brunson, he fits in terms of the age. To me, the thing most important to me moving forward with this team is the age. I know we're not winning a championship anytime soon, but certainly a guy that fits the timeline a bit more, I'm okay with. Is the player at the peak of their career. Jalen Brunson's ascending. The last time the Knicks signed an ascending player was arguably, maybe Carmelo wasn't even ascending. He was in the middle of his career already. Latrell Sprewell, Allen Houston, Stephon Marbury. I mean, when was the last player, Josh and Chat, that the Knicks signed that was actually ascending?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I mean, you would say Carmelo was kind of at the peak of his career. I would beg to differ. I think Carmelo Anthony won scoring titles as a New York Knick. I think he won All NBA as a New York Knick. Stuff that he really didn't do quite as frequently when he was in Denver. So I would say Carmelo. But if you want to, let's say, to not use him as an example, I mean, I think you're right. The Knicks really haven't had an ascending player in a very, very long time that they were able to pick up via trade and or free agency. Right, it's been a really, really long time. So I don't know.
And then you factor that in with the need that this team has had for multiple decades, ladies and gentlemen. A guy that's unselfish, won't miss the open man, like we talked about with Mitch, with Sims, makes other players better. RJ's game, I think, will go to the next level, playing next to Jalen Brunson as well. And the shooting's there, the fit. And of course, if he continues to ascend, the salary that he's likely to be paid, there's a chance he could outplay that. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but all those factors go into what makes a good signing, Josh. If you sign a player where they could potentially still grow to be outplaying, not only matching or earning that salary, but outplay that salary, I think then you're starting to look at, okay, this is probably more on the worthwhile side, worthwhile signing Jalen Brunson.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Yep. Ajay says Julius Randle was ascending when we signed him. You actually, yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Julius Randle had room to grow as well, which made that a good signing at the time. The Knicks got clowned that Julius Randle was our concession prize after missing out on the Brooklyn duo. And that's what made Julius's contract sweet. When he became All NBA All-Star, again, he was outplaying that contract and still might outplay that contract. See, I'm cool with Brunson. He's not my number one target as well. But for the reasons I said, due to age, even the number I would be okay with. The fact that he has a chance to outplay that number. I know it's not a sexy name and it's not what's got fans, what they first envisioned, but what he was doing in the West Coast with the playoffs, making players better. Like you said, sometimes you just have to move your franchise forward as well. It ain't about that home run all the time. It's
right.
Okay. The Knicks haven't been a free agent destination in a while. So to me, this would be a victory in itself by signing a guy who's still growing and did what he did out West, So in terms of other names as well, we see the free agent landscape. John Wall's got a buyout. Kyrie Irving looked like he's staying with Brooklyn. Colin Sexton's a name I've been hearing a lot from Knicks fans as well. If Brunson ain't your number one target, what would your preference be at point? Would it be to blood Emmanuel quickly and give him more burn, or would it be another name we haven't talked about?
I think this is a tough question. This is a really, really tough one because I think, listen, if Emmanuel quickly was ready to be the starting point guard, I think the Knicks would already have went to him. I think the reason why we're having this conversation about who our starting point guard should be is because the Knicks, well, I won't say we know because fans don't really know much compared to the team, but the Knicks do not feel like Emmanuel Quickly is starting point guard material. I'm sorry. If he was, then there would be no talk of us going out getting a starting point guard, right?
Yep.
As far as obviously, I'm feeling the DeJounte Murray thing. I think he's that dynamic of a player, that important to what we can do defensively and offensively. He's a triple-double machine. So I'm looking at him. I think Sexton is an intriguing idea, but those two options are heavily ball dominant. Sexton I like because I feel like he can get to the rim a little bit better, and he can be someone that's a penetrating guard, which we can use. And then I think the sleeper is Malcolm Brogdon. And I know Malcolm Brogdon and DeJounte Murray are trade options. But Malcolm Brogdon, like Brunson, a secondary ball handler, can defend out the wazoo, can shoot the basketball. I know he's been down shooting the past couple of years, but he shot 50, 40, 90 for a season. So I think naturally the fit would be good for Malcolm Brogdon to come in here, if healthy, obviously, along with Jalen Brunson compared to Sexton and Murray. I just think that Sexton and Murray are better players than Brunson and Brogdon. So we'll see. We'll see. I just hope the Knicks don't sign John Wall because that's like Kemba Walker all over again, particularly out of exception.
Yep. I think we're pretty safe. Yeah, I think we're pretty safe away from Wall, but I believe what you said about Brogdon is definitely a potential second maybe option if they strike out. But I'm putting, we all know with Knicks fans and that we shouldn't think something's a foregone conclusion, but certainly the buzz and the talk is that Jalen Brunson's more likely to be a Knick now, which has been a huge swing. And I've been saying that the Knicks could always clear up space. Signing his father may not necessarily mean it's a done deal, but it certainly helps the cause, I feel. And I was thinking like JJ too, good point in terms of, some fans looking at Brunson like they respect his game and they know he's an upgrade, but he's not quite getting us to the playoffs or he's not getting us to that chip. So some fans do believe, okay, why bother? Why bother? Why not just give Quickly the keys and then do it that way?
Because no one is sold on Emmanuel Quickly. The Knicks are not sold on Emmanuel Quickly. And all the people that are lobbying for Emmanuel Quickly to play right now, you aren't sold on him either. And essentially what you're saying is you want to put Emmanuel Quickly in there to be the starting point guard just to find out. And I just feel like at the NBA level, you either have it or you don't. And I think Emmanuel quickly still tries to earn that starting point guard spot. He has not earned it yet. Now, he's a really good player off the bench. Don't get me wrong. I think in that role, he fits really, really well. But I just don't think the Knicks know or the fans know whether he can be that starting caliber point guard, in my opinion. They just don't.
Yep. Would their argument be, well, they don't feel like anyone available is worth it. So although Quickly might not be ready, do you lose anything by just giving him an opportunity?
I think you do lose a lot, right? Because one, you can ruin the kid's confidence like that if you put him in a role that he's not going to succeed, and he doesn't succeed in there, right? You put him in there too early, or you just put him out of position. Like there's a lot of good players who are really good coming off the bench, but as starters, they didn't perform that well. A lot of good players. And C-Mac said he's sold on Emmanuel Quickly. How? How can you be sold on Emmanuel Quickly? What proof do you have? I know with Jalen Brunson, I'm sold on Jalen Brunson being a starting point guard. I'm sold on Colin Sexton, on Brunson, even with the injuries.
Could he be sold on his upside, his work ethic, thinking that he's going to, let's face it, I don't think Quickly's going to regress, right? Isn't Quickly not going to improve, or is he going to regress?
Well, I don't want to sound like the pessimistic type. I'm very, very optimistic. I believe in Emmanuel Quickly. He's one of my favorite players on the team. I just think for what he does and the skill set that he has as far as being a spark microwave kind of shooter and scorer, he just fits better coming off the bench with that second unit with Obi off the bench, right? I don't like him Quickly in the lineup with RJ and with Randall. I just don't think they complement each other well. I think with IQ on the floor with Randall, I think isn't a good idea, so to speak, because you're taking the ball out of Quickly's hands, you're making them off the ball. So I really just don't like that fit. Maybe in a year or two, let's say we get rid of Randall and try to go at it that way when you see a little bit more Quickly available. But to me, for everyone complaining, I think mostly what it comes down to is less about Quickly and more about the Knicks signing a $25 million a year contract. I think that's what it comes down to. Fans are somehow stuck in 2002 instead of 2022, thinking that $25 million a season is that much. But I'm here to tell you, it's not that much in today's NBA. Starting point guards in the NBA average starting at $25 million a season. That is not that big. $100 million, everyone's stuck on that even big $100 million number. That's nothing in today's NBA. I'm telling you, players are getting paid way more than that. And even if we sign Brunson to a $100 million contract, the Knicks will still be one of the lowest payrolls in the NBA with his contract and with Randall's. So just think about that.
Yeah, completely agree. No issue with Brunson's contract. Where I see fans' argument, and I completely fine with that thinking, is that it's underwhelming. Here we were thinking, a year or two ago, with Jalen Brunson, is that the guy? Was that the target all along? And sometimes plans change, things have to pivot. I understand that argument. Jalen Brunson can be underwhelming. If you speak to Dallas fans, they saw him while out in the playoffs. He's a great number two, number 3 option. And the Knicks are still going to be searching for their number one. If Jalen Brunson comes on board, he's not our number one. It's just a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone to where this team's trying to get to. Who knows where they're trying to get to? So I understand that kind of frustration. But Jalen Brunson is ascending. I feel his game ain't capped out yet. And it's not a bad signing. A player that still has room to grow. Is still going to be better. And if he comes to the Knicks, what I'm hearing is he wants to take on that challenge. Like I said, he grew up idolizing Allen Houston around the practice facility. He's got roots here. He's going to come to New York Knicks and be motivated to be that point guard that we haven't had in a long time. And let's see the number first before all these numbers get thrown out. It's all speculation. We don't really know what he's going to get signed at,
Well, CT, I think that therein lies the problem. Like a lot of Knicks fans, when they see free agent signings, and again, that $100 million number gets thrown around, and that even $25 million number gets thrown around per season, Knicks fans' eyes just kind of light up and they get big, and they look at Brunson as that guy, right? The same way they did Randall. When Randall got his extension after the season that he had, you automatically look at Randall and you say that Randall's going to be that number one option. And when he doesn't live up to that, still has a solid season, but when he doesn't live up to that all NBA season, now that's when the paper starts flying and the catch up and everything. People are throwing things, you know what I mean? Because everyone's all upset, all up in arms. But this is what I'm trying to tell Knicks fans. Brunson is just a piece to the puzzle. Brunson is not going to take you from 37 wins to back to the 4th seed. But what Brunson will do is Brunson will improve your offense enough to hopefully get you to a point where you're competing for play-in and if not playoffs, because I think our offense gets much better. I think RJ benefits playing with from someone like that. I think Quickly in his role coming off the bench can come in and play with Brunson and some minutes off the bench, as well as what we do with the bench. So I just think fans need to look at it a little bit differently. Brunson, when we get Brunson, it's not going to stop. We're still going to be in a position to add more players, if not this offseason, also next offseason as well. And fans just need to realize that.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. And like we said at the start of the show, you can't evaluate a free agency a summer with one move as well. Moves lead up into other moves, other things, other trickle effects, which is why we're leading now towards the money question, Josh. What does a successful entire offseason look like for you? Now, for me, if we sign Brunson, I still want to move on from Randall. So you move on from Randall in the future, whether it's in the deadline or later in the future, and we see what we can build around Brunson, RJ, and then likely a number one. Because let's say, for example, right, pie in the sky, my argument to anybody against the Jalen Brunson signing is what would a team look like with Brunson, RJ as your 2 and 3s, and you have another number one with them? That's a pretty nice squad to me. If we throw around some names, but if you add a number one with Brunson and RJ and then the other young core, I think that's a much better position than what we're in right now.
I agree with you, but here's the thing: a lot of these Knicks fans talking about, well, we should just wait and see and let Quickly go out and play, and let's find out if Quickly is going to be that guy. A lot of people are reluctant. Like, people are saying that Brunson is not the end all be all, but a lot of people are reluctant to go out and trade for that guy because they don't want to give up some of these players that the Knicks have. So it's like, what do you want? It's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I totally agree with you, CT. I think that a team with Brunson, if RJ takes that next step and then you add a number one to that, I think that can be a really competitive team in the Eastern Conference in a couple years, right? You continue adding pieces. Some guys start to mature in their roles a little bit. Emmanuel Quickly matures in his role off the bench. Now you're building something, and now you got a bunch of players who are playing together, who fit well together, and you can do something competitive in the Eastern Conference. But it's just that fans don't really know what they want. So,
yep, no, absolutely. In terms of the key free agents this season, now DeJounte Murray looking like there's going to be a trade, which would be nice value for Atlanta if they get Murray for 3 firsts and a salary, Gallinari. To me, that's something where I'm like, okay, I would really, really hope the Knicks explored that as well. Because to me, DeJounte Murray, the shooting isn't a good fit, but I still have him as a better prospect overall than Brunson. Now, what's your argument to that?
I don't necessarily have an argument with going on and getting a player like Murray because I know he's a really good basketball player. And I know he only makes $17 million right now, but in 2 seasons, he will get a max deal. He's coming off an all-star game, right? So you're talking in 2 years, you're going to have to pay that money to him, $36 to $37 million a season. He is going to be worth it in 2 seasons, right, if his trajectory continues to go up. I just question the fit with RJ Barrett because RJ Barrett is going to get paid his contract before Murray gets his. I believe so. Yeah, I believe, right? So let's say you give RJ Barrett his money and then you pay a player like Murray, or you trade three first-round picks, so you're assuming that you're going to want to keep Murray around for another contract. Can these two guys be able to coexist and play on the floor together? That's just the question I have. I do believe Murray is dynamic enough. I believe the majority of the ball handling will go to him. But if you want to see RJ in an increased ball handling role, how can that be able to work with Murray? So I think that's a lot of question marks there. Listen, Murray's the better player, so ultimately everything will eventually work itself out, in my opinion. But still a lot of questions there to look at when you first take a first glance at it.
Yep, absolutely agree. And everyone in the chat, appreciate you. Smash that like button. Talking free agency, just days away. Pivotal offseason for the Knicks. I'm asking Josh, Uncle Fulio, putting him on the spot. What does a good offseason look like for you? give us your ideal offseason from here.
So I'm gonna go on a limb and say the Knicks are able to trade Noel and Burks and get virtually nothing back. Let's say they get virtually no salary back, right? So that puts them at $31 million. I think they'll waive Taj Gibson. That's going to free up another $5 million in cap space. They use 25 to 27 million on Brunson. And then at that point, they can go over the cap to sign Mitchell Robinson at that point. And then they can use another mid-level exception if they have one on someone like Taj Gibson. You bring him back for a season or something like that. And then I think now with that team, you have basically the same team last season without Burks, without Noel. So you get a lot more minutes for Jericho Sims. You get a lot more minutes for Emmanuel Quickly, for Quentin Grimes. I think at that 3 position, you have Cam Reddish there, RJ Barrett. And at the power forward, you got Obi and you got Randall. And I think for right now, I think that's a really good offseason for the Knicks. Maybe they can add someone else in there to sign in between the Brunson and the Mitch signing, because again, you can go over the salary cap for Mitchell Robinson. Let's say we put him at 10 to 15 million a year. And I think that'll be a solid core going into next season. You basically have the same team, but you add Brunson to that. So I don't know. And building blocks, he said the Clippers just re-signed Zubac, so the possible Noel, the LA Clippers rumors should be dead. They're not bringing in Noel to be a starter. Zubac is going to be their starter. They're using Noel for backup. That's what they use in the trade, the player exception for. They can just eat his salary. So there you go, building blocks.
Yep, that is on the table as well. Now, in terms of the Spider Mitchell thing, that's going to be looming still all throughout the season as well. Who do you think is in the Knicks' long-term plans? If you had to put an estimate on it, and who would you like to see us target in the future after this successful offseason that you've outlaid? What would you like to see after that with this squad?
Well, I mean, listen, I think the Donovan Mitchell in New York would be special. I think that'd be big time. That'll be big time if we can get Donovan Mitchell here. So I think in that event, I think you'll see someone like Fournier be gone. I think he can add some shooting to Utah. They can definitely use him at that point. And maybe Randall. I don't know. Maybe Randall. But I know one thing. You're not going to be able to have a Mitchell or RJ and a Randall on the team at the same time handling the ball. That's going to be a disaster. Too much ball. Only one ball to go around. So
Tom Thibodeau's last strand of hair won't be his last strand of hair anymore.
Exactly.
But yeah, what about Kaiser Salute also asking, with the possibility more likely that Brunson's going to leave, does that not leave Dallas in a sign and trade situation where they're left to salvage whatever they can? Do you think that's more likely than just us signing Brunson outright?
Well, I think the issue with Dallas is they're capped out. So I'm not sure if they're able to do a sign and trade successfully with the Knicks because they just added on Wood's contract. I'm not sure how that will work from a salary cap perspective. I think really because he's a restricted free agent. Well, first of all, he would have to accept what Dallas is putting on the table in order to do a sign and trade. I think because he's a restricted free agent, he has the opportunity to choose. And if the Knicks can throw more money at him, I don't see Dallas being able to match that.
Well, yeah, I always thought that if they lost Brunson, whoever signed and traded to them would just slot into his salary. But you might be right. If they're over the cap, I'm not sure how that would work.
And they're like not too far away from the super hard cap in the NBA, over 150, 160 million dollars. So I'm not sure how they can be able to make that work.
Yeah, and I think they've got a decision with Tim Hardaway as well. That's going to be critical for them. Spencer Dinwiddie was a great acquisition for them. It changed their fortunes as well to help them make that run. But in terms of some of the top free agents of this class, we got James Harden obviously has the option. Bradley Beal, though, Zach LaVine. What do you see in those guys and the fate with them? Probably I think Bradley Beal's more likely to be on the move. And Zach LaVine, I don't think is going back to Chicago. I just don't see that.
So I look at it a little bit different. I think Bradley Beal is going to stay in Washington. I think he's been on the record by saying he wants to stay in Washington. His family's there. He has a chance to basically play there for the rest of his career without moving his family. I think that's really, really important to him. Zach LaVine, on the other hand, that part I don't know. Now I could see a scenario where Zach LaVine goes back to Chicago, but listen, if the Knicks are making some moves and they can find a way to get Brunson and LaVine here, now we're talking. Now we're talking about some real good stuff that we got going on here. I would love to have Zach LaVine. I think I was always a Zach LaVine fan because his ability to shoot the basketball. He can close games. He can be able to knock down big shots, and he's just a really good 3-level scorer. And he's super, super athletic, and he's still young. So,
oh yeah,
I would love to have Zach LaVine here. No question about that.
Yep, absolutely. Talk about fitting the timeline, ascending, still in the right peak of his career, all of that stuff. What I've heard is, him and Tibbs, I'm not sure if that's a marriage that'll be rekindled. Just like I thought Karl Anthony Towns was bound to be a Knick, but I don't think that's going to happen either. So, yeah, I'm not the best person to ask in terms of what I think this front office has got cooking up. Like a lot of these guys are just falling off the board. I think they're just taking it day at a time. They might have a plan and surprise us all, but I just don't see it. Josh, I just don't see them cooking up. Oh yeah, they've got this guy lined up. They've got this lined up. I just think, maybe Donovan Mitchell is a guy they're waiting to hear a bit more on. Maybe Devin Booker, maybe in years to come, if his run comes to an end in Phoenix as well, because there's ties there. But in terms of the young core, I'm good with my silver lining this season, and my ideal off season is just freeing up more minutes. A successful season this season isn't winning, because I don't see it happening in terms of a big winning season. It's about each player getting better as well, and shifting pieces around. Yep, opening up spaces, shifting pieces around, and a big piece is Cam Reddish. Josh, you mentioned Zach LaVine. What is your crystal ball for what's going to happen with Cam Reddish? And do you feel like he has a future, a long-term home with the Knicks with this pivotal season coming up?
I think the Cam Reddish trade was a low-risk, high-reward kind of move. I mean, think about it. You gave up Kevin Knox and you gave up a first-round pick that you really didn't need anyway because you already have one. I think, if Cam Reddish works out for the Knicks, I think that's a home run type of trade for the Knicks because they got rid of someone who wasn't playing and a projected pick that wasn't going to be that high in the first place. And Cam Reddish, we all know what he can do. I think he's the most talented Knick on the roster by far. I think he's very, very talented. But he has some motor issues, and there's a question about whether he can fit in this type of system with Tibbs, right? I would hope Cam Reddish is going to be able to turn things around. In the games that he did play, people are complaining about his minutes, but when he did play, and he did play a lot of minutes, he really didn't do that well. He really didn't score as much as we thought he would. So I need to see more of that on a consistent basis for Cam Reddish in order for him to get paid. If I had to put a crystal ball on it, I would say that the Knicks find a way to move on from Cam Reddish at the trade deadline. I think he'll perform a little bit well enough, but not good enough for the Knicks to sign him to a longer-term contract because him and RJ need to get paid in the same year. So if I had to predict it, I would say that Cam Reddish should be gone for some assets at the trade deadline.
Sadly, yeah, unfortunately, because I would like to see a future with Cam here. But the simple main reason why I say I don't think Cam has a long-term future here is Tom Thibodeau. There's so much talk that he was not for the trade as well. Now, something could change. Maybe he really, really gains Tibbs's, trust in the offseason. He has a huge offseason, comes in and lights it all up. But to me, that's unlikely. I think, with Tibbs here, I think Cam has so much value around the league still that it's going to be enticing for this front office to use him in a deal or to see what they can get. And also the second element to that is the financial decision, the huge financial decision the Knicks have to make. They have to find him minutes. In order for him to either grow value or succeed with the Knicks, he has to get minutes. So that's going to be a huge talking point from the very start of the season. And another follow-up question for you, Josh, is he going to be in the rotation at least? Do you see Cam Reddish opening night? Is he going to be in the rotation?
Well, if you get rid of Burks and you get rid of Kemba, that's definitely going to open up some time there. I think Cam Reddish has more of a chance to be in the rotation than Deuce McBride. I would say that for a fact. So I think getting rid of Burks definitely will help the situation a little bit. I think he could be in the rotation. You know what I'm saying? I think he definitely could. But I think for Tibbs, Cam Reddish got to play defense. I think defensively, what he can do on the defensive side of the ball and that potential is what's going to get him on the floor a little bit more. I think that's how he's going to earn his keep. And if he can do that, I think everything else will open up for him. So I guess we'll find out.
Yep, yeah, he has a big chance. Yeah, if this offseason goes the way we want it to go, freeing up the space, chat, Josh. And we have a super chat from Parish Duggar. Salute, appreciate you as well. He says it's going to be a sign and trade. They can take back Brunson's new contract value. That could even be Randall, but it's more likely a Burks, Noel, or Rose. Interesting.
Yeah, but my thing is, how can they take back what the Knicks are offering if they're over the salary cap? Because I'm assuming they're trading away Brunson's bird rights. So at that point, I don't understand how they can be able to take on much more salary from the Knicks.
I think if they are, I think it's gonna be tough if they are over the cap already in terms of sign and trade. But yeah, let's see what else they take back. Maybe the Knicks do them a solid and throw in some expiring that they can just waive, and then with a pick or something as well.
Let's see. I need to look up Dallas Mavericks' current salary projection for what they have right now. See what their money's going to look
salute to the Cam fans out here as well. I'm one of them. But again, I feel like his fate's in his hands with Cam. Let's just see what he does. And in terms of that, I feel like he's a situation where it wouldn't hurt him to play summer league. I mean, I know it's not likely. It's not a likely thing, but would you feel like it's a good decision? I think it would be a good decision. Show that he's healthy, get off to a great start. I think it would win Tibbs over, I think, if he did.
I mean, I think that's in the perfect world, but I think around NBA circles, I don't think that Cam Reddish should prove his worth any more than what he would do during the regular season if he played in the summer league. I don't really see many players that are established in the NBA go back and play summer league. I mean, I don't. Maybe you have. I just haven't. I don't think that'll be a good way for Cam Reddish. I mean, I think to the fan base that'll show us, but to the coaching staff that already know what he can do on the floor, I don't think it would mean that much, in my opinion.
Yep. In terms of, like Parrish follows up with Rose, Burks, and Noel, they're all expiring at the end of this season, I think, so that the salary would still count. But a guy like Taj Gibson has an unguaranteed salary this season. So he could be moved and then maybe waived instantly as well. So, and then re-sign with the Knicks, maybe. Re-sign with the Knicks.
Right.
But yeah, that is a move that's going to happen, ladies and gents. Taj Gibson's salary, $5 million, that will not be exercised, and then he'll be back on a minimum, I think, most likely.
Right. A 1 year minimum type of deal.
And a hard will, yeah. If you still got to win Tibbs over at this point, it's sad because these old players didn't move the needle on point.
See, the funny part about this is I don't think everyone talks about moving the needle. I don't think those veterans were there to move the needle. That's not what they were there for. They were there. Listen, the Knicks had to use those roster spots. They had to sign players, right? And I think, again, people may disagree with me, but I think by allowing these kids to go out and earn their spots over veteran guys, to me, I think that sets them up well in the future. They're earning their spot. So all this stuff about, the veterans moving the needle, that's not why the veterans were there. The Knicks didn't sign those veterans to move the needle. That's not what they did. I think they were there to one, eat bullets for those kids. So when the things didn't go that well, the veterans were going to be the ones taking all the hits, right? But also I think they were there as a form of mentorship and to make these young guys earn their spot. So I don't know. I just don't understand how people are criticizing what Tibbs is doing as far as the veterans and the young players. To me, the young players have played. They may not have played the amount of minutes that you wanted them to play, but they definitely played, and they got a lot of valuable experience. If they didn't, why they quickly play in his rookie year? How come RJ is so advancing and developing in front of your eyes? How come he's doing that? Or Mitch? Or Obi? So I just don't agree with that. And, I think fans kind of use that as a crutch too much.
I think the thing is fans want players on this roster to move the team forward. That's the thing. We don't want to keep watching games just for the sake of it, guys getting paid, games being played out. We want to know that we're ultimately getting closer and closer to where we need to be. Now, I understand the reasoning, what you just laid out, where they had to make signings and they may not necessarily be guys for the future. But a lot of us have been fans for long enough. We want to see us be moving in the right direction, not just be signing roster spots for that reason.
Let me ask you a question, Steve. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but one quick funny thought when I just want to hit on with D. Cool. If we had Tim Hardaway back, it would mean 2 father sons. Tim Hardaway Sr., Jr., Jalen Brunson, and Rick Bruns.
Yeah. Former players with their kids. Let me ask you a question, CT. Let's say the kids did play last season. They did play last season, right? And they got all those minutes that everyone wanted them to get. And the Knicks are back in the lottery. How do you think Knicks fans would feel about the players that we had on this roster after the season they just had? You think there'll be some optimism there when the Knicks are winning 20 games a season? You think the fans will be optimistic about that team? You know what I'm saying? So everyone is talking about like this argument about tanking. Like this is the perfect thing or the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. People wanted the Knicks to tank, so they recommended playing the younger players so that the Knicks can tank and lose more games. But the veterans supposedly were winning them more games, right? But they wanted to play the young kids. Vets should make the playoffs and not play simple. That just doesn't make sense. That does not make sense at all whatsoever. Because if that's the case, those players were better than the young kids that you want to throw out there on the floor. You think fans will be okay with a losing team out there?
This is what has got to happen though. There's a point in the season where things have to change. That didn't change last season. There's a point where there's 20, 30 games left to me, and those vets haven't produced. It's a losing season. I'm okay with changing it up. In fact, it needs to be changed up.
But this is the part where I disagree. The Knicks weren't completely out of the play-in spot. They were not completely out of it. They still were competing for it. And there was a lot of games. Well, that's what I'm saying. Mathematically, they still had an opportunity. Like, why would a coach to his young players, why would he say, okay, we're just going to mail it in? We're just going to mail it in. Like, what message is that sending? What are you sending to your young players at that point? Okay, so now you're going to put the young players on the floor and then have them lose more games?
A better minutes distribution. I wouldn't say wipe out all the vets, but a better minutes distribution, okay? So the front office made that trade for Cam Reddish, right? Even before the injury. Do you feel like he should have got more minutes from the get-go? Or do you feel like he should have come in and had to win trust first to get minutes?
I think he should have came in and won trust first. Because when he did go out there and go on the floor before the injury, he didn't perform that well. So what are you telling your team? You just traded for a guy, right, who doesn't know anything about the team system. Now you're just going to go out and play him just because you traded for him. And then he came in there and he stunk up the joint. He didn't play that well. Cam Reddish didn't play that well. So what are you telling your team? Look, you telling me, okay, like all of them are expendable? Or you telling all your young guys that you're expendable? I just don't agree with that message. I think as a coach, and fans don't understand what it's like to be a coach and understand you're not just dealing with X's and O's, you're also dealing with personalities. And if you lose your veterans in your locker room, you lose the entire team because the kids are looking up to the veterans in the locker room. So I just think that people need to look at that other side of it as well. I'm not saying Tibbs did everything perfect. By no means he did. I think offensively we need to get better. But when people question the development of the young talent and then in the same breath use and say that RJ is growing and Mitchell Robinson's growing and Quickly's growing, they want Quickly to be the starting point guard. I don't think you can have one without the other, in my opinion. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think this is, to me, what makes more sense. Last season, they gave Tom Thibodeau that opportunity to push as hard as he wanted to make the playoffs, right? What would it have looked like after making the 4th seed to mail it in the season after? He in the front office's eyes, he earned that extra year to go all in. But I think things are going to change a little bit more. They're going to pivot towards, and I don't think this front office is against playing the youth more.
Right.
But I think they did want to give Tom Thibodeau that year, and Dolan especially. What would it have looked like, again, making the playoffs, 4th seed, and then the next season after just mailing it in to play all the young players as well? We know the Knicks and MSG, it's all about image. It's all about revenue. It's all about those kinds of things. So I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that these young players will get more minutes. But to your point, they need to earn minutes as well. They need to
and I think,
if you sign Fournier for $19 million to just put him on the bench or out of the rotation, we saw that what that did with Kemba Walker. That created a storm.
Right. And I'm not saying it was the worst decision to do that, because I didn't like the fact that it happened. But I mean, ultimately it needed to happen, right? But I just think that the way it could have happened would have been a little bit better. But I think if you look now what's happening, we're talking about Burks and Noel not being here for next season. That's going to open up rosters minutes right there for your young players. Right there, just off of that alone. Kemba's gone, right? Only veterans that we have on the team, we're talking is a 27, 28-year-old Julius Randle, right? Taj Gibson, if he comes and plays that Udonis Haslem role. And then who else are we talking about? Rose? Everyone else we got on the team. Oh, Fournier, I forgot. But everyone else we got on the team, yeah, I mean, under 20, 28, 28 years old. Josh, it's silly to say that the vets and Tibbs know they blew it once they were mentally defeated with 25 games left. The fans were mentally defeated. I don't think the locker room was. I think they still were playing hard. It's not like they gave up. They went out there and gave up, right? How many games did the Knicks lose when they were in it and they were winning the game, and then they lost the game in the final minutes of the game? So again, fans tend to equate themselves with what's happening on the floor. You were mentally defeated because the team wasn't doing as well as it did the previous season, but not the Knicks. Tom Thibodeau still had these guys playing and playing hard. So I just think that everyone kind of looks at it the wrong way, and it's not putting themselves in the position of the team on the floor.
Yeah, I do believe Tom is open to playing guys, but they have to earn his trust first. Tom Thibodeau doesn't want to play players that aren't helping him win. I know it's a twisted thought, but he played guys because he thought they would help him win, the most. But we've heard from Mark Berman, we've heard from people that he privately realizes he should have played the young players more. And at the top of that list was Obi Toppin. So in talking about this free agency, this offseason, what's a successful situation if we're carrying Randall into the season with Obi Toppin? What does the ideal rotation look like for you? Because Obi has to get no less than 20 minutes.
This one is going to be tough. I mean, listen, I don't mind sitting Randall, particularly when he's not playing well. I would definitely sit Randall and get Obi out there. So I think that's a little bit more of a for Randall. That's like a little bit of an alarm. Like, I need to play better. You can't mail it in. You can't have these periods or this time in games where you just don't seem engaged. I forget what game it was, but I was watching it, and Randall was just a slouch out there on the floor. But they couldn't put. I forget the game. It was the game where the one where he walked off the floor. I think it was that
Chicago.
Game. The Chicago game at the Garden. It was a win. But if you remember during the game, I forget what it was, but Tibbs did something that we have not seen him do before. He took Randall out before the first quarter was over. Normally, he would keep Randall in for the entire first quarter and in the beginning of the second, and then he'll sit him. But I think in this particular game, he took Randall out at like the 8 or 9 minute mark of that first quarter, and he rode Obi for like the next 15 minutes until halftime, right? And then he did the same thing with Randall. Again, I think Randall played like the first 9 minutes, and then towards the end of that game, he rode Obi. But Obi was so tired by the time the end of the game came, so he had to put Randall back in at the end of the game. Now, we wound up winning, but to your point about the rotations and learning how to mix the minutes up a little bit better, Tibbs definitely needs to work on that. Do not play guys 4 quarters in a row. We don't have guys like that on the team. Now, to stagger the minutes, I think that'll be a good idea moving forward for Obi and for Randall, and I think that'll help both players get better.
Yeah, I think Tom will be, like I said, he was afforded a lot more leash last season. I think he's going to be on a shorter leash. How much shorter, I can't say right now. But I liken Leon and Tibbs' relationship like, two best friends. I think they argue every single day. I could see them sitting in the room discussing, debating. And what I'm expecting to see is some mini mandates this time around. When I say mini mandates, like we saw that he must play Jericho Sims towards the end, there's going to be somewhat of a mandate where, okay, they're going to establish coming in to opening night that, okay, look, Randall needs less minutes. You have to be more open to playing Obi and Randall at the 4 or 5. Little things like that. That's what I'm looking out for as well. Because again, we can't see a broken record all over again with Tom Thibodeau just having free reign over his own rotation with so many question marks financially with Cam, with RJ, with Obi, these kinds of things. Like they are, for all the moves they're making and that, they are not stupid. They know decisions need to be made. And it's going to be key. Like, again, there's a reason why I've been saying our young players don't have the value around the league. It's not because they're not good players. They weren't able to be showcased to a lot of players. I'd be interested to see what Obi's trade value is around the league, just Obi on his own. What would rival teams and execs view Obi as, right? It wouldn't nowhere near be what he's worth in terms of his ceiling if he was playing 30 minutes a night.
I don't know. That's all hypothetical. It has yet to be seen. But what I do know is that I think a player like Quickly and a player like Obi, for the minutes that they did get, they produced in the minutes that they did get. And just because you don't start a player or you don't play a player a particular amount of minutes does not mean the player is not as valuable. I think people often equate the minutes you play with the value you have to other teams. I don't necessarily think that's the case.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Look, I think it's definitely a situation that's going to have to be resolved with Randall gone at some point. I think, or making that commitment, like Magnum says, no, either you have to trade Obi or you trade Randall. But to me, one of the most aggravating things is why didn't he try playing both of them for more minutes?
I think it's
I'm
just
not saying 15.
I'm with you. I've been lobbying for that because I think Randall at the 5 is a really good thing because I believe it's easier for Randall to get to the basket at the 5. I think that causes mismatch problems. I believe if you run a 4-5 pick and roll with Obi and Randall, with Randall as the screener, you can create a lot of matchup problems with that, right? A lot of matchup problems with that. But I think Tibbs is all about rim protection. And again, I would like to see that small ball lineup out there. I think that small ball lineup works. But Tibbs, that's just not his coaching style. So, I mean, again, I don't think it's necessarily wasted development like Hardwood is saying. I do think it's a missed opportunity, but I don't think that's wasted development. Too often people equate coaches' philosophies with development. I don't agree with that at all. I do think it's a missed opportunity, though, for sure. Definitely a missed opportunity.
It's key with guys on rookie contracts, and we know Obi ain't the youngest prospect. He's already going to turn 23 this season, during the season as well. And I know what you said about Tibbs. He loves that tall rim protector at the 5 spot. Unfortunately, there's just no negotiating with that. He wants either Sims or Noel or Mitch at the 5 spot,
right?
For that rim protection as well. But yeah, it's going to be so fascinating. So many storylines again. Obviously, news. We will look out for more news every single day. But I put the Jalen Brunson thing as probably their top target. It's more likely on the side of not likely. It's going to be fascinating what happens with Dallas if they end up with egg on their face, because they seem pretty cocky that they were going to retain Brunson. Do you think there's any way that Brunson just spurns us now and stays in Dallas? Or,
of course.
Or do you think he's a Knick?
I mean, I'm optimistic about it, but of course, I mean, we're talking about the Knicks here. I mean, come on. I mean, we've been burned before and spurned before, right? I think there's definitely a possibility. You can't root that part of it out. But I'll tell you one thing, the front office has to connect on this here. They just have to. Because again, what are you selling the fan base on? Free agency. That's what you're selling the fan base on. If you're not going to draft somebody in the draft, and you're not going to make a trade to go out and get someone, you're selling your fan base on free agency. And if you don't get someone in the free agent market, essentially what you're saying is you don't think this team needs to improve. Well, I'm not going to say you don't think they need to improve, but you don't have a way to improve the team this offseason. You're content with this particular roster that you have, and you want to throw them on the floor next year, right? So now you get rid of let's say hypothetically, you get rid of a Noel and you get rid of a Burks, and you can't add a Brunson, right? So you go into next season with, not that many open roster spots. You fill them here and there with some, small players here and there that's pretty much not going to play. Now, then what's the excuse going to be next season? You got a bunch of young guys that are going to play. Is that team going to be better than what it was last season? Or are they going to be worse? And then what would the fan base say at that point? Oh, the young kids played. Oh, it's because of this and because of that. You know what I mean? So I think the front office has to connect here. They have to hit here. It doesn't have to be anything big, but you gotta get a point guard. Simple.
Yep. I think they're in a situation where they can't necessarily please all the fans. I think they're going to end up with a huge portion of heat at the end of this offseason. And that may not necessarily mean they strike out on everything. I just think, a lot of fans aren't enamored with the Brunson situation. But I'll flick open the free agent names. Is there anyone that you feel like an Anthony Simons trade or a Joe Ingles signing? Is there anyone that you can see here that you would love to, to bring in? We got obviously we got unrestricted free agent Ricky Rubio. We talked about Levine and Bradley Beal. That would be more of the home run. DeAndre Ayton.
DeAndre Ayton's restricted though, so I would like DeAndre Ayton over Mitchell Robinson. I would like that. I would take that in a heartbeat. No questions asked. I would take that in a heartbeat. But I think that limits what we can be able to do. I like DeAndre Ayton though. As far as on that back end, on that bottom end, I think Serge Ibaka would be a good team for what he brings defensively. He's definitely much more versatile. I'm looking at, let's see who else. I can't really see all the way.
I really want to see what Mo Bamba's market is and Dennis Schroeder's.
Yeah, Mo Bamba. Mo Bamba. That's if we don't sign Mitch. Definitely would like Mo Bamba there. But I'm looking. I think for this free agent market on the low side, I'm looking at free agents who are bigs who are versatile. That can be able to play both the 4 and the 5, be able to defend both the 4 and the 5, and come in and give us some added minutes. Because again, I think there's going to come a time where the Knicks need to put a versatile small ball kind of roster on the floor to make things work for what they need to do offensively. And right now, I just feel like Mitch and Jericho Sims are centers, right? They can't rotate in between those positions. Randall and Obi, I feel like, Obi can play a little bit of 3-4. Randall can play 4-5. RJ can play 2-3. Fournier can play 2 or 3. Grimes can play 2 or 3. Brunson is going to be a 1. But again, in different offensive sets, you can have him play off of Quickly or have him play off of Rose, right? But I think at that center spot, at the big, we don't have that much flexibility at that point up there. So that's what I would like to see.
Yep. I think, Bumba's going to be a guy that he's been being quite active as to wanting to come home. But let's see his market. Ronald says he thinks the front office's approach is to overpay for an ascending star and then draft strong role players around them. And a couple of names I just want to mention too is I think Robin Lopez, if he's willing to take a veteran minimum, would supplement the center rotation. Let's say if an injury happened, Robin Lopez, again, on a veteran minimum only, if that was possible. And then the bigger names, you've got Miles Bridges. There's talk that Charlotte are getting cheap and negotiating that they haven't offered him the max yet. Would Miles Bridges sweepstakes be something that you would want to get into?
Well, you gotta get rid of Randall first for that to happen. You gotta get rid of Randall. To me, you gotta get rid of Randall and Obi. I think, in my opinion, because you think if Obi's not gonna play or get as much minutes as you think with him, with Randall there, what makes you think he's gonna play over Miles Bridges? Miles Bridges is overwhelmingly better than Obi Toppin, right? I think you would have to get rid of Randall in order to make that work. But I'm surprised that Charlotte is actually taking that stance. I mean, I can kind of understand it. It's not like Bridges is an all-star caliber player. Yep. I believe he's good enough to be. I just don't think he's at that level yet. I kind of look at him and RJ in the same boat, but I think Bridges has proven a little bit more, in my opinion, than RJ. So it's tough. But I think for the Hornets franchise in a smaller market, I'll just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, the reason I see it is we know Jordan. They're in with Gordon Hayward and Terry's contract. They're not in a position to be. I mean, I know they should be maxing out Bridges, but they need to get rid of some salary first before they can do that. So that's going to be very interesting.
I'm trying to think. Bridges, he's coming up on his 5th year now, right? So this is going to be the last year.
Yeah, Kevin Knox, funnily enough, is a restricted free agent as well.
Yeah, so I mean, this is the last year. Yeah. This is the last year. Yeah, I mean, maybe they can try to get off of. Maybe they can try to get off of Scary Terry's contract. Bobby Portis, he's another one of those guys that I would love to have back on a smaller deal. Flexible, can play the 4 and the 5. You can have him coming in and roll off the bench. I think that'd be a good role for him.
Yep, a shooting guy like Mike Muscala, perhaps another stretch 4. Gorgie Jeng, if he's willing to take a minimum, I could look at. I can't believe Paul Millsap's still around in the league.
Right.
LaMarcus Aldridge, going to be interesting to see what he does, whether he goes back to Brooklyn. Blake Griffin as well. Here's a name, Carmelo Anthony. I get a lot of comments, a lot of heat saying, why discuss Carmelo? Again, I discuss it because I think with Leon Rose here and Carmelo Anthony's roots in New York, if he's still in the league, there's always that chance that they may bring him in for a farewell tour.
I've been a Carmelo Anthony to the Knicks fan ever since he left. I thought that the Knicks should have done right by him to try to bring him back. I thought he would have been a tremendous mentor for Obi, for RJ, for Randall. But again, a lot of these names that you mentioned, CT, this is another all these veterans that the fans are going to hate, that they're going to blame, that they're going to, if the Knicks, particularly if they get any type of playing time, oh, how did you get minutes over Miles McBride or this player or that player because you're not a part of the future, so you don't deserve to play at all. You deserve to sit on the bench and hold the towel for the young players. That's pretty much what it's going to come down to with a lot of these players. Josh, you have to make a decision to let go of a hopeless situation because of how Randall checked out with 25 games left. The best thing would have been to audition our youth corps to see what we need to do. Listen, what I'm trying to tell you is the Knicks already know what they're trying to do. The Knicks know what they're trying to do. Not you, not the fan. You have your opinion as a fan. I'm saying you as in we, as a fan base. We have our opinions. I'm just telling you what the Knicks are doing. For everyone that's saying that, oh, well, the Knicks need to play these people so they can know what decision they need to make. They know what decision they need to make. Not you. Just because you sit on your couch at home and you watch these players play a certain amount of minutes, you haven't seen enough of them, the Knicks have. And they're making that decision. That's all I'm saying. I feel like they know what direction they're going in. And the fans think they don't have a direction, but they honestly do. They've told us millions of times, and they're showing us by the moves that they're making. So let that part play out. And if it doesn't work, then you judge them. But to say that the Knicks don't have a direction or the Knicks need to do this so you can find out whether what you have, I think the Knicks already know what they have.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a farewell tour. He's not going to, on the premise, I wouldn't want Melo taking up big minutes for anybody and things like that. It's 1 year, ladies and gentlemen. It's 1 year, a veteran presence. But Lou Dort, that's a name I would really, really want to get in on. Lou Dort. We need those guys. The Knicks were dead last in positional versatility, 30th. Lou Dort could guard 2, 3, 4. I mean, what are your thoughts on Lou?
Big fan of Lou Dort. They say I look like him. I don't think I look like him at all, by the way.
Who says that?
Everyone says that. A lot of people on Knicks Twitter and a lot of people in the chat. I look like, listen, but Lou Dort can definitely help us. We're talking to someone who can defend, who can shut down the opposing team's best player. I would like to have a player like Lou Dort on this team. I think defensively, Lou Dort is someone who everyone thinks RJ Barrett plays like defensively, but he's not there yet. I think Lou Dort can be a tremendous addition to this team. He has playoff experience. And you don't really expect much out of him, but he works his tail off and he works hard. So Lou Dort would be a good acquisition for us for sure.
Yep. And also Jordan Poole. That's a name in terms of a guy ascending. I would love to try to get him out of Golden State. They're in a $300 million luxury tax situation.
They have no problem with paying that luxury tax. As long as they are content for titles, they have no problem with it. This is why I tell people, being cheap in the NBA does not work. This is not having the Knicks not spend money and you want to spend it at the 99-cent store trying to get a 2-for-1. We can get 2 players for the price of 1. Instead of paying that one player all that money, we can get 2 players for that. This is not the 99-cent store where you got a single parent that's raising 5 kids in a 2-bedroom household. That's not how you run a franchise in the NBA. You pay the money, you spend money, because if you go over the salary cap, there's so much exceptions, trade player exceptions, mid-level exceptions, veterans, minimums, all of that stuff that you can do by going over the salary cap. 28 teams spent over the salary cap last season. You do not win in the NBA by being cheap, period.
No, absolutely. What I think the Knicks could do is entice them. We know they got their window, they're all in, and they know they might want to rebuild and reset for the future. Let's say, hey, we'll save you millions and millions on luxury tax and we'll give you heaps of picks. So you can refresh for the future when Steph and that are gone. And then, hey, we'll take Jordan Poole. But I'm just trying to look at these young ascending guys that can get the Knicks where they need to go. If it's Brunson, which it all looks like it's going to be, it can't just be Brunson. Like I said, there's follow-up moves, all leading into what is going to be a huge, successful, hopefully, off-season for the Knicks. It starts now. It starts with re-signing Mitch first, and then it starts with shedding salary, being a player in free agency, and then seeing what else happens. We have flexibility moving forward. Josh, we are saving a lot of these picks. In your mind, what are we going to use eventually with all these picks? Like what is going to happen with this, and what's the ammo?
So here's my theory, right? Well, first of all, we know that the Knicks don't really value second round picks like that. Second round picks do not have that much value on it. That's why, to me, trading 4 of them away to get off of Kemba Walker's $9 million contract, not that big of a deal. To the regular Knicks fan who thinks, oh, you gave up 4 assets to get rid of Kemba Walker's contract, they're second round picks. Relax. Most teams don't draft 4 second round picks in a given year. Okay, second round picks are nothing. Yeah. So I think in that case, for second round picks, you might see a few more of them go. The Knicks still have a ton of them left. So you might see a ton of them go in trades to clear up some more money, stuff like that. As far as these first round picks are concerned, I think they're going to be used in a trade to go out and swing the bat for a superstar. If that time comes. And I'm not talking about maybe next offseason, but probably the seasons after that, where we have an abundance of first round picks. You might see a few of them go in order to entice, a Donovan Mitchell, or another team with a disgruntled superstar that's looking to get his way out and that we need to make a trade for. So that's why I think having those picks are very, very important. Who knows? In a year from now, we might be talking about bringing Kevin Durant across town. You don't like that, huh, CT? You don't like that?
No. I only laugh because it's just where we've been to where we end up.
Right.
But
exactly.
I'm open-minded for anything. I root for the team rather than players. But what I will say is, look for trends. This front office, they maintain relationships around the league. They'll go with, they'll explore CAA, they'll explore the Brunson. It's a connection. That if there's one thing I can hang my hat on with this free agency and this front office is look for familiar names, familiar faces, connections around the league. It's all that. If anything, what the Knicks are doing, they've been consistent at it. Right. I haven't seen any inconsistency.
No, I think they've been very consistent. They've been conservative. They haven't really swung the bat as much. They tried to get as many assets as they can. And they've been smart. The Knicks have been really, really smart from a fiscal perspective. They're not overspending. This is why I don't have a problem with $25 million for Brunson. I think that's a perfect contract in my opinion, but that's not overspending. That's spending just right. And let's say everything works out for SNY reported that we may be trying to get Brunson and Murray. That'd be crazy. But let's say everything works out in a sense where we get Brunson, we able to re-sign Mitch like that. We're only talking $10 million over the salary cap. That's not a lot. That's still going to be one of the lowest spending teams in the NBA. And I think that can be a competitive roster on the floor next season. Playing eligible, potentially get to a playoff game. And then next offseason, talk about moving Randall or Fournier. And then adding another piece that way via trade with some of these picks. And that's how you continue piece by piece to build a winning team. So, listen, I like it.
Yep, me too. Yeah, like I said, if it's Brunson and more, like I said, Brunson ain't coming here to be the number one. I know fans are upset with where the team might look like right now with Brunson in tow, but look at it like Brunson is a piece of a puzzle,
right?
Basically, right? This front office is trying to assemble a jigsaw puzzle, and Brunson's one of them. You'd have to hope RJ is part of that. Their picks, they're saving all their picks for something. And going into my philosophy, I've always said I'd love for the Knicks to just sign a player and not have to give up anything. Now, if you sign Jalen Brunson, you're signing an asset for nothing. Basically, you're not having to shed the farm like we did with Carmelo. We not have to do another blockbuster deal. All these picks that they're saving is going to be for a bigger deal that it's going to be like, hey, okay, we can stomach this. Our cupboards aren't going to be bare after this. We've still got all the young core, and we used up a lot of these picks and expirings as well.
Absolutely.
So, it's a to be continued, to be determined. It's been a great show. Appreciate everyone rocking with us. Josh, again, we'll chop it up more after free agency, after summer league as well. But are you going to be heading up to summer league? Any games this season?
I'm thinking about it. I haven't been to Vegas in a long time, but my hand has been itching, ladies and gentlemen. So I definitely need to gamble a little bit. Definitely. So I'm thinking about it. But I definitely will tell you this. After Thursday, I think the Knicks might shock a lot of people with who they decide to bring in. But they better bring in somebody. You can't be creating all this cap space for nothing. And I'm going to take a look at this video that Ian Begley just put out in regards to the Knicks perhaps landing Murray and Brunson. That'll be crazy. So I'm excited for that. CT, thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. Always fun talking Knicks basketball with you. We hit our 2-hour mark, so I'm just happy to be here, and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yep, absolute pleasure again. Salute to the chat, everyone out here, replay gang. Join the conversation in the comments. Yeah, let's jump on this Ian Begley news as well. But to me, I don't see the Spurs acquiescing to the Knicks' needs, given the pop and the backflip with Mook Morris. But let's see. Like you said, we definitely could be in for a shock. And strap yourself in, ladies and gentlemen. And let's get it on the next one. We'll catch you soon. Peace.